to Stratford-on-Avon as Curry returns to the Midlands. Still home to him in spite of the time spent in America these days. His mother lives just round the corner from this hotel and some 20 miles away from the old family home on the edge of Birmingham. John was the youngest of 3 brothers. At school, he was a good athlete, but hated team games. And he developed artistic interests, which his father, who died when John was 15, was never able to understand.
One Christmas time, or my birthday or something, I was given £5 to buy something for myself by my father. And I went into Acox Green and bought... don't ask me why I chose them. Maybe it had to do with the covers of the records or whatever, but I chose Scheherazade and The Nutcracker and Swan Lake and the Pastoral Symphony, none of which I'd ever heard before, and bought the records and took them home. And I was very, very pleased and excited by what I bought, and I went to my father and showed him what I'd bought, and he was very disappointed, and he said, "Oh dear, I thought you might buy something you'd keep." I still have the records. They're very tattered now.
To go back to your skating, you were on the ice for the first time as a 7-year-old. How did things progress from then on?
Well, I was allowed to go once a week, which I enjoyed a lot, and it was the high point of my week. And then one day, I was taken on a Saturday morning, which was a very unusual. My mother had given me a new sweater. I had to skate in short pants because, short trousers. And of course, it's terribly uncomfortable because your knees get very cold. But anyway, there I was in my little short pants and this new sweater, and I was told that there would be some people watching, but I must take no notice whatsoever, and that I was to go on the ice and do a spiral, and then come off, and then go on again and do a waltz jump, a 3 jump, and then go on again and do an upright spin. And I did these 3 things, and then meanwhile a lot of other children did the same thing. And then someone told me I'd won a prize, and I had won a competition. I didn't even know I was competing.
At the start, he won events because the judges liked his musical interpretation. But as he moved on towards his first success in the British Junior Championships, opinions changed.
When I stopped looking like a little boy and started to look like a young man, then suddenly all the things that I had done up until then absolutely with everyone's blessing and encouragement, I was told I should stop doing. I was told I shouldn't use my arms, I shouldn't do spirals, I shouldn't try and make everything look so effortless and graceful. I was actually told not to be so graceful. And I couldn't understand why, and it was because they couldn't accept it from a young man, whereas they could from a child.
What did you do for money, John, while you were learning to be a champion?
What's money? I worked, first of all, when I left home, I went to London and I got a job in a supermarket. That was the first thing, in Richmond. I skated from 6 a.m. until noon, and then I worked in the supermarket from 1 till 6, and frequently later on in the evening. I used to earn just enough money to pay for my practice and my lessons. And then I got a job in London as a receptionist, which was paid more. At that point, I was earning £13 a week for the afternoons, and I had just enough to pay my train fare up and down to London, and I was left with a few bob over. Fortunately, skating in this country is not that expensive. The ice time is very cheap, and the lessons weren't that expensive. So I was able to make it, but I was always very, very poor. I know that it was, I used to think about not paying my fare on the train so that I could get there and back and maybe have £1 over at the end of the week. But I did pay my fare on the train.
What about the loneliness of a developing skater?
I was very lucky because I met a few very nice people who were really, really helpful and real friends. And Alison Smith, who taught me for 4 years. Without Alison, I would not have been able to make it, because Alison really just held me up during the hardest period, and just because she liked the way I skated. And without her, it would not have worked out.
You laid considerable stress on the word real when you were talking about friends. That suggests to me that you haven't found it easy to know who are real friends.
No, I don't think it is really that easy, and sometimes I think it gets harder. I'm probably not the easiest person to befriend, I'll be honest about that. But I think real friends are very few and far between, and I'm very lucky I have a handful.
It might be argued that Ed Mosler had the most influence on Curry's career. He introduced himself to Curry after the 1972 World Championships in Bratislava, when the British champion had finished fourth. And at the time, Curry had no idea who he was.
And he was American and was a supporter of the whole American team. He paid for the training of the entire US team and also, incidentally, put people through medical school and all kinds of things. He was a very, very generous man, and he was not allowed to include me in the work of his foundation because I'm not a US citizen, but he went ahead and supported my skating for the last 3 years out of his own pocket, as it were, because he knew that without that I would not have been able to continue.
You had a number of coaches. Do you know how many?
Well, I was thinking about it, and I think there were 10, actually, yes. I had Ken Vickers, who was wonderful in style, and Piri Levitsky, who was really very inspirational. She's a great character and very inspirational. Armand Perrin, who inspired me a great deal by talking about the great figure skaters of the past to me. And I didn't never realize that figure skating, the actual school figures, you know, the eights and brockers and counters, could be that exciting as he saw them. That was wonderful. I had Arnold Gershwieler, I had Alison Smith, who was one of the only teachers I've ever had who nourished me artistically as well in later years. Peter Dunfield, that was a disaster in America. That lasted for all of maybe 6 weeks. Gus Lucy, who really taught me a great deal about jumping. And then Carlo and Christopher, so there were only 9. And myself. I taught myself a lot of it, to tell you the truth.
From a very early stage?
I think so, yes. I mean, for instance, I learned to do a triple loop by myself. No one ever told me how to do a triple loop. I just did it. I did a very nice double, and after I've been doing that for a year or so, I thought, well, there's no reason on earth why I shouldn't do a triple. And I did, and I landed the very first one I did. So whether you can say that was learning anything or whether that was just, you know, a sort of natural ability, that's a different thing. But I think I taught myself a lot of the time.
Did that make it difficult for others to teach you?
I don't believe so, no. I don't think that... Carlo says I was the easiest person he ever had to teach because he really didn't have to do very much. He just would say, do it, and I would do it. And I believe that if you're paying someone a great deal of money for lessons, it's silly to, you know, go to them. At least you should try what they're saying. You should try their technique or their ideas out before you rule them out. Or, whereas some people say, I won't change, whereas the gardener.
Would Arnold Gershwieler say the same thing?
I doubt it. I don't think he'd say anything positive about me.